Welcome to the first in our series of webinars about CompNow modern deployments for Apple. My name is Katrina Tauro and I'm a project and resource coordinator. My job is to organize resources for all the projects that CompNow runs for our external clients. Today we have with us from CompNow Marcus Ransom, Apple Solutions Architect, and Aaron Poley, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer. We will start off today with talking about modern deployment review. Marcus, can you take us through what that is exactly?
Thanks, Kat. The modern deployment review is a way that organizations can find out where they are in terms of their Apple ecosystem. Rather than trying to put together a brief of where they'd like to get to without really understanding where they are at the moment, that can be quite difficult. So the idea of the modern deployment review is that we can come in and work with them, work with the teams that they have there, and understand exactly how they're approaching Apple devices at the moment, how they're treating all of the different categories and different parts of how you need to deal with Apple devices in your environment. And from that, we can put together a report card that shows what they're doing well, where they need some work, and where they need to go to. So, Aaron, what else would you use to describe the modern deployment review?
Yeah, look, I think, Marcus, it's really a case that, as you said, we're going in to work with an organization, understand the environment, understand where they're at, and then from there be able to take in Apple's best practice around how to manage, how to use, how to deploy Apple devices, and merge that, combine that, translate that, if you will, into how that should look for the environment. Just copying how someone does it in one environment to another isn't necessarily going to be right for that new environment. So for us, we're going in, we're understanding you, the customer, your environment, and then giving you the recommendations aligned with, infused with Apple's best practice on the other end.
It also gives them the tools to understand where they need to go. One of the things we see a lot with enterprise Apple environments is people saying, this is what we do with our Windows fleet. Can you make the Macs, make the iPads do the same thing? Now, that's really not going to give the users the best experience. It's not going to get the best out of these devices. So this is also a really good way for organizations to understand what's possible, what they should be aiming for. If they're not used to dealing with Apple devices, or if they are wanting to find out what the current best practice is, as you mentioned before, this is a really good way to understand that, and especially, as you say, in the context of their own requirements and their own environment.
Thank you for that. So can you take me through a bit more how it works, like the process itself?
Yeah, sure, I can grab that one. So really, really practically, what we do is we actually do a series of workshops. So the really, I guess, important thing to understand is that an organization is not just about its IT team. It's not just about its end users. It's not just about its executive and management. It's actually about all those things coming together and working together for a common good and a common goal. So what we do is we go through and we make sure that we run workshops to identify the different areas that impact how Apple devices are managed and how they're deployed, and go through and effectively interview and discuss the environment, the requirements, etc., to kind of break them down into key pillars so that we can use those key pillars as areas of recommendation and pathway forward.
And the important thing is that in these workshops, we're not discussing solution. We're not going to the workshops and telling people what they should be trying to do, how they should be doing things. That comes next. It's very much about understanding what they're trying to do and how they're trying to solve those problems, what sort of solutions they have in place at the moment. So we can identify what things they've got in place that are actually best practice or very easily able to be turned into best practice, and where there may need to be a different approach from the organization as to how to do things, or even to bring out some opportunities that nobody was really aware internally that they had, things that may actually be really beneficial to the users.
Cool. So from my understanding, you kind of go in and assess their current environment, and then we have a look at how we can improve it.
Yeah, very much so. The focus is very heavily on assessing in terms of The solution, we provide some feedback and some direction and guidance, but it's more about trying to work out what solution an organization should be going for.
Yeah, it's very much about the readiness of the organization and the pathways that we can take to get them to that next step.
I was going to say, another way of looking at this is the sort of engagement that gives an organization the power to put together a really good brief for what they want to do, a really good business case, and a really good where they need to get to. Some of those may be short-term goals, some of them may be more long-term goals, but this will be a really useful piece of work for them to understand all the different opportunities they have for change, rather than just feeding into one project that will fix everything. It could branch off into several different projects that can run concurrently or one after the other.
Okay. And Aaron, who would we usually get involved in this from our side?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kat. Look, as I said before, an organization is actually made up of a lot of different people, a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different invested interests and backgrounds in the organization. So in that regard, we actually want to involve not only, for example, IT teams and the various sub-teams that incorporate IT, but we actually want to involve different end users, different people within the organization to understand how Apple devices can and will be used, not only from the technical, hey, how does the certificate get deployed or how do they join Wi-Fi, but also what are the different goals and outcomes. So for example, you look at a marketing department, a common place of Apple users inside of an organization. They're going to have a very different desire of what they want to achieve with that device than, say, an IT team will, or an executive. So we really want to make sure that we get an understanding not only of the technical landscape, but also of the real world use case of what these devices are doing in the business, so that we bring forward recommendations that are holistic in understanding of everyone's needs and also the business's priorities. For example, security teams, things, and the compliance and policy that they need to enforce. So we try to actually take as much width and breadth of understanding of everyone's needs and use case and prioritize them accordingly.
The other important people to get involved is executive sponsorship. An undertaking like this, to ensure that it's going to be successful, needs to have validation right from the top, having executive sponsorship involved in the initial briefing. Of course, the executives don't need to be involved in all of the workshops, but also when we come back and present the findings, getting the executives to understand why we're doing this as well as how we're doing this, that's a real key to success, to then be able to initiate the change that's required.
Thanks, Marcus. So what do we actually get as a result of these workshops?
That's a really important part of this engagement. So we see too often organizations invest heavily in workshops to work through ideas, discuss strategy, plan roadmaps. Everybody comes out of the workshops really excited about what they're going to do. But as soon as they get out of the workshop environment, other commitments, other requirements get in the way. Everybody's back to doing what they were doing before, and we lose momentum. So after the workshops, we get together with the whole team that's been involved, and we present back to them a really quick, high-level understanding of what we've been discussing with them, where we feel they are, where some opportunities for some really quick wins are, where are some of the things where people are doing really well. Then we go back and we go through all of the data that we've captured, and we put that together into a report that goes into a really deep dive of all of the different areas involved in an enterprise Apple ecosystem, looking at best practice, where they need to get to, what sort of different opportunities they have to transform in those areas, looking sort of on the micro level at small individual components, but also in a much broader level as to where the organization could get to, where we think they should be going. And that gives the executive stakeholders a really powerful tool to be able to look at that and go, okay, are we on the right track? Are we working on these items? Do we need to allocate some more resources? It's also something that we can work with them as well to help them deliver and come up with solutions for all the different areas.
Aaron, what's your take on it?
Yeah, look, I think really just to summarize and recap on some key elements that Marcus has already said, it's really a case of getting that initial session at the end after all the workshops are done, the last workshop, if you like, to really talk about what's the high level, what have we seen, what are the quick things that we should focus on as quick wins, and then from that stage, that report is what arms the organization to really have an understanding of what is next. What are the things that they need to work on? What are the, as Marcus said, resources they need to allocate? And what are the areas that maybe they're deficient in to progress themselves, and they want someone such as CompNow to help progress that area. So it's really important to get that tangible, physical report, but also that person-to-person engagement in that last session and the follow-up sessions that will occur afterwards to make sure that that's communicated effectively and is received effectively. As we know, communication one way is not usually very effective. When it's in two-way mediums, that's where the real gold comes out. And that's what we try to achieve, not only with that last workshop session, with the high level quick wins, but then with the actual report that we produce and the follow-up and the discussion that happens from that report. It's really, really important.
Thanks, Aaron. So what does CompNow as a company bring to Apple Modern Deployment?
Look, I think it's really a case that it's in our blood. From an Apple perspective, we are one of the longest standing Apple channel partner resellers in Australia. We live and breathe the stuff, and it's really been a case that through that being in our ancestry and our heritage, we have then moved forward over the years into really being a device management, device deployment, and end user compute expert in the industry, really bringing forward all of our experience working with different verticals, being from small business to corporate to education, K-12, higher ed, etc. We've worked in all these different verticals with a lot of our customers and really brought an understanding of, across that breadth, what does it look like to empower end users with a device that they love to use? And because of that, that's made us a leader in that space. So we bring that perspective to these engagements, which I think brings really powerful outcomes for our customers.
Also, being Australia's first and largest authorized enterprise reseller, that pedigree of working very closely with Apple, but also understanding what this means in the enterprise space. We've got over 75 engineers. We've got a breadth of people with lots of experience with Apple devices that can come and be involved in these workshops from different perspectives with your team as well. So, the breadth and the depth of how we're working on these kind of engagements is something that CompNow stands aside from the rest of the companies in Australia.
Thanks, Marcus. So if a company is interested from here and they go and do the modern deployment review, what are the next steps that come after that?
As we mentioned before, one of the biggest challenges is putting all of this time and effort into an engagement like this and then letting it just sit on the shelf and nothing happening. So, we won't just deliver the engagement and then walk away. We'll be working with you to say, how's it all going? Do we need to come back in and have a talk? The organization themselves are going to have their own idea about how things are going, but we can look at it from a short distance away, a different perspective, and say, okay, we can see what you're trying to do here. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? As I mentioned with our large engineering team, CompNow is always available to come in and help deliver, take over delivery in some areas, provide consulting, provide advice, the whole range of support that an organization may need to deliver this and work out how to solve the problems, how to deliver the opportunities, how to give the users the experience that they want.
Yeah, I think a great way to summarize that is decide on the outcomes that you want. So that the report will have lots of different vision and goals and outcomes. Decide on the outcomes that you want to achieve, and then decide on the level of ownership that you want to take. That can be fully owned internally within your organization, that can be partially owned, or that can be externally outsourced as an outcome to an organization such as us. So decide on your outcomes, decide on your level of ownership. That will give you the next steps to move forward.
Thanks, Aaron. And also thank you, Marcus, for your time. So if there's anything you've seen today that you want to know more information about, just send us an email at sales@compnow.com.au. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.